Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Joshua. And this is going to be our attempt to talk about diversity in comics, particularly as it applies to Marvel, I think. Marvel? I'll take that as a yes. So, this is not going to be an easy, egg to crack? Is that a saying? Is that a thing you can say about things?
I don't know now that you mention it. I mean, it seems apt, but I don't know if that's a thing that people...
Why would it be a hard egg to crack? Have you ever had I've never had difficulty cracking an egg, really, so...
If they're frozen.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, but why would you have frozen eggs to begin with?
Right, so alternatively, I could say this could be a bit of a frozen egg. That's my new go-to.
We'll go with that.
All right, so yeah, and that's because it's just, man, it's such a broad thing to talk about. But we're gonna try. We're gonna try to talk about the whole diversity push at Marvel in regards to the characters and such. So let's start off kind of just trying to be a little more specific about what we're talking about. So what we're talking about here is really like all of the legacy characters that have changed. Either gender or race, mostly. Mm-hmm. So we have things like, Miles Morales, right? Mm-hmm. He's black or Hispanic. He's black and Hispanic.
Yeah.
He's Spider-Man. Female Thor. Amadeus Cho, he's a Chinese-American Hulk. Mm-hmm. Spider-Gwen. What else do we got? We have Sam Wilson, Captain America. Mm-hmm. The list goes on as well. There's a lot of these characters.
All new Wolverine, all new Hawkeye.
Right, female Wolverine, female Hawkeye. Those are two more great examples. So there's a lot of flack about this. A lot of back and forth about, is this a good thing? Is it bad? Is it manufactured? So that's what we're going to break down here.
Sure. So let's start off with, I guess, what caused all of this to occur, which is that. And it pains me to say it like this, but it's a bunch of those, like, shitty news organizations decided to just, like, pick on comics one day, for various shit, like lack of diversity and unrealistic body standards, which is absurd, because it's like when you make that comment about fucking the people competing at the Olympics, like, I mean, that's kind of, what we're talking about.
Right.
But yeah, do you think there was validity to their criticisms, even though there were not the most reputable news organizations really trying to tackle this issue?
Yeah, I would say so. I think there's a lot of validity to the basic premise that most mainstream comic books were written for a specific audience in mind. It's the 15 to 30-year-old market, right? The white male market.
Yeah, they're all white dudes. Everybody's a white dude.
Yeah, to the point that it is a little off-putting and weird to read a lot of times. Why is everybody a white guy in his late 20s? It's really kind of odd. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you could make the argument, or I've heard people make the argument, well, girls just don't like comics, because that's not really the type of shit they're into. I mean, What about black dudes? What about Hispanic dudes? What about, Asian dudes? Like, you don't think that they would like comics?
Right.
I mean, like, even if you discredit, like, a whole gender, which is, like, its own problem, which, I'm sure we'll get to that later. But, yeah, you see my point.
Right, yeah, absolutely. It's definitely like a cycle, right? It's like self-fulfilling. All the comics were written with a certain readership in mind, and thus that certain readership continues to be the readership interested in the medium. Mm-hmm. An interesting comparison I like to make is romance novels, right? Here's something we can kind of compare to, right? We can. Sure. It seems on the surface pretty similar, right? Romance novels,
in some ways,
right? Romance novels are mostly written for 25 to 50-year-old women. Mostly towards a white female audience. And they're mostly written by white women in that age range. So I guess my thought here is sometimes it's easier to examine something when you're not so close to it. Mm-hmm. So if we were to look at that particular thing, would you feel like there was a problem there? Is there a problem in romance novels of being non-diverse?
My first reaction to that would be that I feel like it doesn't really. I have no interest in like attempting to be into them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like I don't have a dog in the fight. But I mean, somebody may want to. I mean, if somebody made that argument, I would probably agree with them and be like, yeah, I mean, that doesn't make sense. It's kind of fucked up. But it doesn't personally affect me, so it kind of, yeah.
Right. For me, it helps kind of frame it in a way that, again, I don't have a dog in the fight, so it makes it easier for me to digest. And having no dog in the fight, I actually feel like maybe I care less that romance novels aren't diverse. Like,
yeah.
It's just not for me. Like, I don't go and look at a romance novel and say, man, that's bullshit. Right. That I can't get a romance novel written with me in mind, because it's just not something I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. So it seems strange then for me to see a lot of news outlets that are not necessarily comic-based outlets. Like, I've seen things on like Washington Post and USA Today about like non-diverse comic. Like
most of the shit I see is like BuzzFeed.
Sure. But I've seen some pretty legitimate things that are about how, like, okay, so Black Captain America, when that became a thing, one of the undertones on a lot of major stories like USA Today and stuff was about how now comics are more diverse, which is good, because they were not, which was sexist, and they're trying to fix a problem, right? But I'm not so sure you would see the same sort of writing about romance novels. So
it's safe to say that comics are kind of a bigger deal now.
Could be.
I mean, it's all over TV
with the films and television, and that brings it further into the spotlight. Do you think that's part of why there's been this huge push now to complain about non-diversity in comics?
Probably, because it fits like the whole media thing now.
Right.
Like it's part of the machine.
Right. You're probably right. Now, to that same effect, while we're talking about like analogies and other mediums, do you think it's really that fair to say that comics aren't diverse compared to, say, film and television? Before you even answer, I'm not so sure that's a fair argument.
I mean, again, with as big as it is now, like, I mean, you have to, I think, assume some form of responsibility. I mean, if we were going to talk about 20 years ago or something, I would say that comics were, if not on the level of like romance novels, like just a little bit above it. Mm-hmm. Maybe even below it, because romance novels and shit you can get at the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And at that point, like, it's such like a niche thing that I think it's easier for people to kind of let it be its own thing. But again, with as big as it is now, and like, the TV and the movies, and then, their attempts to funnel that back to the books, like, I mean, it's hard to say they don't have any responsibility to that effect.
Well, I guess my question is, if you look at television, how much of television isn't focused around white people problems?
And that's a problem.
Almost all of it is focused on white people problems.
Sure.
It's all white leads everywhere. Sure. Like the occasional
even in Asian roles and shit. Like Tom Cruise is the last samurai.
Right. And there's exceptions to the rule, but I think there's less exceptions to the rule in television and film than there are in comics, especially currently.
Yeah, currently, definitely.
I think comics, compared to most other mediums, has now become the most diverse medium in terms of representation and such. Even if it seems, if you look at comics in a bubble, it's like there's not really that great a representation, but compared to all other media types, I think they do a pretty damn good job. Mm-hmm. So,
especially currently. Again, if we're talking about 20 years ago,
not at all. Really. No, but over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of changes. Looking at Marvel's comics versus Marvel's films, for example. In the films, they had a chance to do Miles Morales Spider-Man in the new movies. Did they? No. Nope. They went with white kid Peter Parker. They have a chance to do Sam Wilson as Captain America. Have they?
Nope.
No, he's still the Falcon. Right? They could have female Thor. Do they? No. Still a white guy Thor, right? Mm-hmm. So even the film
version... There could have been like a Black Widow movie. Has there been?
No. Even the film versions of these characters, they went back to the white male versions of the characters rather than using the modern diverse cast. So even the films bear out this idea that, the comics are probably more diverse than any other of the mediums that you could look at, really.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange at that point because, you know, a lot of people may look at the movies as like representative of the comics and stuff like that, you know, and they're supposed to be that, so it makes sense from an outsider's point of view to see it as that, but it's not.
Right.
You know?
Right, yeah.
In many different ways.
Exactly. So let's move on in the discussion then. So let's talk then a little bit more specifically about the idea that those characters that were there it's not that they've been gender swapped or that they've been race swapped, which is usually the way this is approached then from the other side. Okay, so we've talked about the criticism against comics, so now let's talk about maybe the criticism against what they've done, the new diversity, right? So the criticism from most people is that's not my Captain America, that's not the real Wolverine, that's not actually Thor. So let's talk about that a little bit. Do you kind of understand where I'm going to where you pick this thread up?
Yeah, definitely. So the first obvious argument against that would be that all of those characters still exist and are a big part of their own like universes and stuff. I mean, Wolverine isn't gone. You know, there's Old Man Logan.
Right.
You know, so if you want to read that. So at that point, the only perspective that I could see making that criticism is if somebody wants every Wolverine comic ever and they're pissed off that Logan isn't going to be Wolverine from like here to here.
Right.
Which I think is a fucking stupid problem to have.
Right. It's messing up like the titling scheme or something, which is nonsense, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's basically, again, going back to the people that, oh man, these last 50 issues of Spider-Man would be terrible. I hope the next one's going to be better.
Right, right. Stop buying it. Yeah.
Just buy something else.
Yeah.
If you're into the old Wolverine and you want fucking Logan, like go buy Old Man Logan. You have no obligation to the title on this fucking book. You don't.
Right. And now,
the creator, I think, even went to Old Man Logan. So
right. He moved over. I think what this is about, in a way, is people just being really attached to those names and feeling like they're being somehow, like you said, like the title that's on the comic matters to them for whatever reason more than the character's story itself, which seems really strange to me, right? Like just an odd way to look at comics in general, right? Like we could continue talking about Wolverine. I think it's a great example.
Sure.
Because this is a character that without giving her the Wolverine name, you couldn't push this character to the front.
Sure, she'd gone by the ways.
Right. She's had X-23 comics, which have actually been pretty consistently good, but they don't sell. They don't sell because people don't buy titles with characters they don't know. But when you slap that Wolverine title on there, all of a sudden people say, oh, it's a Wolverine book, I'll buy it. It's this weird psychological trick that they're using, but it's this mixture of where it's causing a lot of the backlash, but it's necessary to get these new characters' names out there. But if you're really interested in the character, why aren't you paying attention to the character rather than the title, right?
Sure. It's kind of like in professional wrestling when they have a new guy that's coming up and like he just debuts and they want to like say this is going to be one of our top guys now, like he's, you know, get used to like seeing him a lot. They'll put like a title on him or something like that. Like he'll debut and within like a couple weeks like be the Intercontinental Champion or something like that.
Right. Comes in and makes a big splash.
Right. It's the same deal. You know, like they're taking their Intercontinental Championship and putting it on female Wolverine.
Right, exactly, yeah. And I think part of the problem is a lot of the people who criticize these ideas, aren't familiar with how comics work enough. They're not real comic book readers, which, I mean, sounds really pretentious, but I mean it quite literally. Like, a lot of the people making the complaints, I don't think actually read comic books, or else they would understand. Like there was a lot of backlash about Black Captain America. Why is Captain America black? Why do you have to change Captain America? Why can't he be a black guy? It's, this whole idea of like it's affirmative action gone crazy, right? But anybody who actually reads comics understands that if you like Steve Rogers, he still is a character. Like you can go read S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Or Secret Avengers or all the things that he's in and still get that character, right? It's not that he's been replaced. It's that he has his own title with a different name, and now a new guy is wearing the outfit so that people see it, you know, and go, oh, what is this? And maybe get into a new character that they wouldn't buy a Falcon comic, but they'll buy a Captain America comic, or they'll at least pick it up and open it to see what the heck's going on with it, right? And so I think a
bunch of shit like that in comics, actually. Like when it got revealed that Captain America was like a double agent for Hydra, like people like flipped the fuck out, and like I didn't see anybody flip out that seemed like a legitimate comic fan.
Right.
Like nobody that actually reads comics like gave a shit really, except for maybe a few neckbeards here and there that, you know, again are like, you know, I need him to be patriotic in this section of my collection. You know?
Right. Yeah, most actual readers looked at that news release and said, okay, that's a plot device. That
shit, that's crazy.
Yeah, will work itself out, and it's just meant to tell an interesting story, and that's it, right?
Yeah, give it a few months and it'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think a lot of the criticism of the diversity changes is really just ignorance of the medium and how it actually works. Can we agree there for the most part?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on then from that, and let's talk about like actual criticism. Or maybe praise. Let's go to both ends of that.
We read the Mighty Thor first issue, which is Jane Foster Thor, and we didn't like it.
Right.
Not because it was Jane Foster, but because we thought it was poorly written. You know, oddly enough, because it was by Jason Aaron. Like it just didn't strike a chord with us. And I think that's a valid complaint.
Sure.
Like, you don't have to like something, you know, just based on, you know, these criteria or whatever. But that's not to say that all of the comics that have come out because of this are bad. Like, Miles Morales is a pretty good-ass Spider-Man.
Right,
you know?
Right. It's been pretty consistently well-written. But that's not, and as so has the Wolverine stuff.
Yeah.
It's been pretty cool as well. I've heard good things about Ultimate Hulk or whatever. Totally Awesome Hulk, I think.
We really liked All New Hawkeye. Even though Clinton was in that one, you know, we really enjoyed Kate as a character and learning about her and stuff.
Right. On the other hand, the Sam Wilson Captain America, I totally did not dig. I thought it was a little on the nose and uninteresting. But how much of this do you think is, maybe the word I could use is fake or put corporate? Right. How much is it natural, and is that a problem if it's an unnatural decision to make the change?
Well, I think it's obviously not a natural decision.
Right.
I think it's a direct response to
a directive.
Yeah.
If you may.
Right. But I don't think that necessarily. I mean, it would be very hard to make those changes come about naturally. You know, there would have to be some reason for them to do so. So I don't really see a problem with them just being like, okay, well, you know, we have this problem, so we're going to fix it.
Me neither. I don't see how that's really inherently any different than the way the structure of like editorial and comics works anyway. Especially at the big two, right? Like they say we need somebody now to write a Doctor Strange story who wants to pitch it. And people pitch it and they say, I like that pitch, let's go with it. You write it, right? So how's that any different than saying, like, we want a female Wolverine story? Somebody pitch that, and then they take one that's good, right? It's not like they go, hey, Jeff Lemire, like, you're now going to write a story about, you know, a gay transgender Cyclops.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't happen. They say, here's the thing we want, who wants to write it, and then they get pitches and then they pick one, right? That's kind of how it works. It generally, obviously, it depends, but that's the general process. So to say like, oh, it's just corporate mandated, it's not natural, like none of it is. That's not how it works. None of it's natural, right?
Yeah.
So who cares? I think if it requires corporate mandate to get more diverse storytelling in comics, then that's what corporates should be doing.
Yeah, really on that note, I think it's kind of awesome in that way because they're giving like all these fresh starts to these characters, which is, I mean, it's totally like shaking everything up, you know, and giving a lot of new narratives from, again, these new characters and stuff. And that's what I like. I like to see new shit happening. I don't want to read the same fucking X-Men comic again. you know?
Yeah, exactly. So, all in all, I think both of our opinion is that it's been pretty successful, right? Although we haven't liked everything that's come from it, that's natural, and that's part of like more diversity, is that your core audience, or I don't know if we're really their core audience,
No.
but you know, your previous customers may not like some of the new things you're doing, and if you're a previous customer, it's silly to get too upset about that, because we have so much available to us already, right? Like, if I don't like it, I just won't read it. I'll read one of the other hundreds of comics that come out every month. So, what about DC? Can we talk about DC a little bit in comparison? Do you think how do you think they're doing here? I don't think their track record's as good.
I don't think they've had as strong of a mandate to like shake it up and be diverse. I mean, they make attempts here and there. Like there was a solo Poison Ivy book for a while. And, you know, it wasn't good, but they made it.
I think their lack of good movies or well-liked popular culture films has shielded them from a lot of the criticism that Marvel has gotten. I think because people just don't really care about DC as much these days, because they really, in the general public's eyes, are basically just Batman. It's the company that does Batman, right? And they have Superman 2 and also Arrow.
The Suicide Squad's coming out.
Arrow and the Flash, and the Suicide Squad's coming out, so that'll be cool because that has something to do with Batman, right?
Yeah, Harley Quinn's in it.
Yeah, so
My cousin cosplayed at it.
I think they've dodged the bullet so far, but man, they just did Rebirth. They just had a chance to kind of do some of the same.
But it was kind of the opposite of what they were going for. Like they were trying to take it even farther back. Like, let's go back to these like legacy characters and shit.
Right. They actually removed a lot of their diversity. They got rid of the Black Wally West. They got rid of, which Black Wally West was a really poor version. That was the very clear corporate mandated thing that a lot of people think is happening at Marvel, but actually happened at DC, where it was just, now he's a black guy. The old one doesn't exist anymore. Now he's, let's just make him a black kid for no real storytelling reason other than just, why not? And they although Midnighter and Apollo is coming back, and I think it's going to be written by Orlando again, which will probably be really cool. They waited, right? And when they released their main stuff, they got rid of the only gay character they had. They got rid of Black Wally West. They just keep, they're like more like just average white guy comics than before, and it seems to be on purpose. Yeah. Do you think that's going to bite them in the ass in the long run?
That depends on the size of the audience that's making those shitty complaints to begin with. Yeah. I could see a lot of people being like, well, fuck Marvel then. I'm going to go read DC books because they still got the white dudes.
That's true. I've found the Rebirth stuff incredibly boring for the most part, because it all just seems like more
the same shit.
The same average stories that we've gotten before with the same white dudes running around.
The same origin story every 6 fucking pages.
Right. Yeah. So, all in all, I think Marvel's doing a good job. I think it's a good idea, and I don't think there's anything to complain about, really.
Not all the books are good, but you could come out with any section of new books and not all of them would be good. So, I mean, it's not faulting the characters or anything like that.
Right. It's just 90% of everything is crap.
Yeah. There's been plenty of bad Steve Rogers. Like,
right.
Sam Wilson is bad. Like, he's just falling in line with the rest of them, to be honest.
All of the other terrible Captain America stories that weren't written by Ed Brubaker.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah. We like Nick Spencer, though.
Yeah.
I hope he does well.
Yeah.
I hope he does well.
Yeah, well, thanks for watching. We will be back on Wednesday as always, and we do this every Monday or Tuesday or
whenever it comes out.
We do this once a week, and we do the other thing once a week. That's really what it comes down to.
You're getting 2 a week, so don't bitch about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye now.